Hey everyone, good afternoon, good evening. Yeah, my name is Omkar, and first of all, I would like to thank you to BSides Milano for selecting my paper. And my paper is all about the power system center. The basically, we are hearing a lot of attacks since the Russia and Ukraine war happened. A lot of things are happening, and of course, due to the COVID-19, we had a lot of attackers, targeting the environments, targeting the organizations and the government sectors. With this, the power grid station itself is a critical part of the nation as well. So, what I am going to talk about is how we have intruded into the power system or power grid station, and we were able to do a lot of malicious activities and shut down the station itself. With that, I'll go ahead, and this is the whole agenda of my presentation. And this was actual red team engagement which we have performed in the one of the European nation, and I would like to thank you CyberArch Consulting, because we have done this collaboratively, and this company has a good security services project, so we had done its collaborative red teaming project. And this was the I would like to share the findings, what we have done, the 0 days, what we have found in the specific power grid stations and the power system center, and how we intruded into that. So this is the agenda. I'm going to talk about the architecture, how the architecture looks like in the specific, the OT environment or the power grid station environment, how that the system center is connected with the OT devices, how it is segregated, how the are, so everything. So isolated, firewalls, everything. What is the architecture basically? And then I will deep dive into the offensive approach, how we have done it, and then we can close the notes on the defensive approaches and questions. Good. With that, um, this is just a little bit introduction about me, and of course I call myself as a passionate learner. Always I'm a learner, cyber security guy, and I like to learn things, I like to break the things. That's what is my passion and interest, and I do that more our offensive engagements, red teaming engagements. And I'm currently working with the Coupa software as a lead security engineer, and the CyberArch consulting as a company as a freelancer and consultant for the CyberArch consulting. So with that, I'll start with the architecture. I just kind of, if you can see the, this is a kind of a diagram, which is the actual architecture of how the system, how the things looks like. Of course, this is a proprietary, so definitely this is not something which I have drawn. So this is a proprietary diagram, and this is from the one of the power system center which we actually targeted, and we intruded into that. And you can look at this, there are plenty of substation servers, power station servers, and this is where we actually intruded into the specific synthetic, like that's power system centers. These are the two areas which are behind the firewalls. Of course, everything is segregated with the VLANs, that is, we call it as a virtual LANs, and this all these things are connected to the all end devices, and end devices we call it as a OT or SCADA devices, which we can operate for through the power system center. That is what is the actual architecture you can see over here. And this power system center is basically supported with multiple vendors. Like you can, if you have OT devices which belongs to ERL, Siemens, ABB, there are lot many vendors which are supporting this power system center. So uh, I don't know, but many of the power system or power grid stations are using this kind of power system center right now, and those can be vulnerable. So let me give you a background on how the power system center, what exactly the power system center is. So basically, power system center is the centralized product. So what exactly it does is it basically monitors your all the devices connected which are to the all this power system center. So the devices, as in the OT devices, SCADA devices, all the power grid stations, substations, everything. It allows you to manage those devices, manage as in, you can centralize. When it comes to a OT infrastructure, the traditional approach was, if there is a problem, so to troubleshoot that issue, some contractor or some person who is actually technician, that they need to go to the center, access the OT devices. So this center, the product, sorry, will allow you to basically manage all the devices centrally without sorry, physically visiting to the isolated zones. That is the reason this power system center products came into the picture. And this is what the red team engagement look like, what we have done. So you can see at the left hand side, sorry, without power system center, it is basically a direct access. Even though the technician, we don't know about, of course there is a zero trust and everything, lot many stuff, but the technician can go and access the device and do lot many things. Or if a hacker or attacker is there, it can access directly with the controller. But when we say the power system center is in place, that means you don't have direct access to the internal infrastructure. That is the main purpose of the power system center. You should be able to connect to the only power system center, and then you can connect to the devices and the stations, whichever is segregated. That is the scenario. And what we have done basically, so it was a pretty fun when we had done this red team engagement. And of course it was we actually found 0 days in the product, the power system center product, which leads to plenty of activities. So sorry, we have done lot many stuff. That is the first case. Would, of course, I hope you have heard about military attacks. uh, that is tactics, techniques, and process. So we have lot many techniques as well. So we have utilized some of them to achieve this red team engagement goal. When we were into the environment, of course with the limited access, we are completely out of the environment of whatever we have as isolated environment, we call it as in a SCADA environment. So we actually entered into the environment with the different stuff, and we tried with the MITM approach. That is the most famous. Of course the social engineering is a different thing, but yes, most famous or most common MITM approach with the different bunch of things. And of course they're impersonating users with the hashes which we have captured. And then we scan the environment. We got into the specific zone where power system center is, server is there. And then we tried to escalate the privileges from the lower privilege user to higher privilege user. And then we found a bunch of vulnerabilities. We took the advantage of that vulnerabilities, and we entirely take over the station, and we can do lot many things on the station or power station devices. So if you look at this is a typical red team, a typical MITM approach which we have followed. And this was a pretty straight, I would not say straightforward. We were having multiple connections which we have established. And then we have seen, we were able to trick the one of the user with the file share system. And the user was just, instead of actually entering the actual file name, yeah, the user entered the wrong file name, which leads to the hashes captured on our MITM window. You can see it was of course redacted because of the privacy issue, but yeah, this was the hash. We captured the hashes of the actual user who was the user for specific the environment, and we captured it successfully. Of course it was not pretty within a half an hour job. It was completely, we scanned the environment whole, and we tried to do MITM in different zones, and then we got a success on the one side of the domain controller. And then what we have done is next is specific, we got the actual credentials of the user. Of course it was difficult to crack, but we were able to crack it because of the policy was present. But with the, even though you have a password policy, the password was pretty straightforward, and we were able to crack it, and we were able to utilize that credentials to gain the access to the one of the system. And then we dropped our obfuscated payload, which we have created manually, of course, with the multiple obfuscation and the stuff, because the environment itself is secured with the Windows, of course, Defender, and they were having the lot of other security center as well, Microsoft Security Center. So we were tried to see whether we can execute anything, whether we can run any kind of PowerShell, or when we can run any kind of malicious file. It was blocking earlier, but with the obfuscation of multiple things, we were able to successfully run the file, and we got the shell on our system with the 32 privileges. And luckily we had the user, which we have cracked the credential, was quite good. I would not say the admin one, but at least we have a good privileges we got, and we were able to execute the file and get the reversal on the system of the what we have. And then we actually scan the environment, and we got to know there is a one of the web server. This basically is a web, or product itself is hosted on the one of the web server. And we scanned the environment, and we got to know this is the what we were looking for, the center. So when we actually visited the center, it was basically with the Windows credentials configured. So the power system center, what is defined or what is configured, was without a normal user credential. It was a domain authentication. So you have to be a user in the specific domain, and then you can access that. Again, there is a criteria: only specific set of users who are required to access that power system center, those are only accessible, those are only allowed. So we were kind of lucky. The user which we have impersonated was having the access to the specific environment with that his Windows credential, but it was a read-only access. Of course, he was not a kind of, the user was not a daily worker or daily troubleshooting guy. He was just monitoring the stuff. So he has access of only read-only, and this was the UI of the power system center, which we got access via scanning the environment. This is entirely into the different LAN, where we were able to intrude, and we were able to access that. And this was the UI you can see, and we were able to see that user has the read-only privileges. That's what the problem what we had. And then we started digging out multiple left hand side. You can see the multiple features of the power system center. You can see the devices which are connected, you can see the equipments, you can see the stations, you can work on the reports, get the reports, export the reports, and multiple stuff. So when we try to navigate through the multiple things, the problem with the permission, because we were impersonating user with the low read-only security group, that's the reason we were not able to allow access the pages which are listed over here. So what we have done it quickly is we tried to grab the started with the our intruder, specifically simple running the like a dir buster, running the what are the APIs, API documentation. If there is an API documentation available for the specific product, so let's go to the API. So we tried some kind of information gathering on this kind of product, and then we got to know there is a this some of the APIs which we can try to access. So what we have done is, then we have, you can see, as you can see in the screen, this is the permission of the user. The user permission is very less, that is read only. User cannot user cannot edit anything, user cannot write to anything. It just kind of read only, so you can view the data, but you cannot modify the data. That's what is the permission for the user. So we were able to see the devices, then we were able to see the substations which are deployed, or the where these devices are deployed. So the substation, like the power grid station, is works how let's consider the in Italy, the Milan is the area. So one of the area is a substation where it is located, one of the location. So that we were able to see some of the substation which are allowed for the specific user, and but we cannot modify anything, we cannot edit, or we cannot do anything to that. This was just purely the read only permissions, and whenever we will try to access anything, it was showing us the unauthorized. That was the issue with the permissions. So then we started getting the APIs, and we started trying the privilege escalation. So the surprisingly, the thing was happened is the read only user, there was actually this is the actual finding. What I'm talking about is the naming and the permission name was the read only, the membership of the group, security group membership was also read only. That the read only user don't have access to anything that is which is not belong to. Also, there is no any edit or modify access. We cross verified with the vendor. So then we got to know that this is what is the problem. So we were able to actually get the actual substation or the OT devices, IP addresses, and the port number which are allowed to connect for the high privilege user. So there was a utility, or there was a feature called, you can see the endpoints, or you can see the devices, but you cannot see the endpoints. Endpoints as in the OT devices, their IP address, their port number, which you can connect to. That was the feature. But we were able to successfully call the specific API endpoint, and we were able to see the details, grab the details of the OT devices which are in the substation, and we were able to also connect to that devices with this user. So there was a big major flaw in this. Like, we were able to see the work orders. So there are plenty of features in this power system center. So when we talk about power system center, it basically manages everything. That means you can manage the endpoint devices, you can manage the OT devices, you can connect to the devices, you can shut down the device, you can shut down the station itself. So there are a lot many features, a lot many operations available, and you can do that. But that is something is only with the master or super admin user, with the, of course, authorization. That requires authorization as well. But with this, we were able to grab the APIs which are there, and we were able to try whether we can access the API or not. So it was like kind of trial and error situation. We are just hitting the APIs and getting the response whether we can get it, or maybe forbidden or anything. And we were lucky that we got the some of the endpoints which are not having the proper authorization controls, which leads to gaining the access to the substation devices and the OT devices. And this was the screenshots. You can see this is the actual screenshot of the findings, what we actually found in our red team engagement. This is, of course, some of the areas you can see the redacted, but some of not, because those are the ones which is confidential. But yeah, you can see these were the APIs at the left hand side, the API slash v1 for the substation devices and the work orders, and we were able to get the data of the any device with this API with the read only user. Of course, there is a read only user, that means you can view the data, but that is not, it's not, you can view all the data, you can view only specific feature items, and we were able to do the entire view or entire overview on the any of the feature. And you can see one of the area is we were not able to see the work order management, we were not able to modify. At the second screenshot, you can see this is the device specifically work order. And we, if you look at this, the highlighted screenshot is modified by this user, and this user is the actual read only user. So the thing is, it was not allowed to basically uh, any edit, delete, or add. These are the main operation when we call it up in an application or product. So edit, add, edit, delete. So the actions you cannot perform with this user, but we were able to call the API, we were able to tweak the things, and we were able to modify the data of the device, and we were able to successfully reset. So there are some of the couple of features in this power system center, like you can reset the password of the device, you can telnet to the device, or you can connect remotely through this center. Instead of going to the device, you can directly connect through the center. So we were able to do that as well because of this lack of authorization controls. And you can see here, so there was one more thing which we have done is we were actually impersonating the users. It's not like simply straightforward, we are okay, can we so what we have done is we grab the APIs and we take the responses from the whatever the APIs. Okay, this is the station template, or this is the device. What exactly the user, how many users have create, what which user has created that template, or which user has created that work order, who is the user. So when we send a get API or get request to the specific API, we get the details from the specific feature that okay, this is the user which has created this API, or sorry, this work order, these things. So with that information, we actually crafted a new query, and we were able to impersonate the user as well. User in the sense, you can see clearly over here, my username is the fat, and we were able to create a station template on behalf of the admin. So you can see the executed by is admin, but we were executing that. So that was the thing which we have done as well, with the chaining of the things, like getting the information and then utilize that to one of the API which is for the activity records, and you can use that specific name, or you can pass on that, and you will actually see this, the operation was executed by the admin, which is not me, which is not the user which I have logged in. So that was the pretty interesting thing, and we actually cross verified these things in the, because this was a purely engagement of the red teaming and the blue teaming evaluation as well. And this was of course, the thing is, then we immediately uh, check the logs, and we will see that it was actually executed by the admin and not by the user which have logged in. That means it's a pretty business logic and the escalation flaws in the app, in the product itself, which is built for the power system management. And of course, with this engagement, we actually found plenty other vulnerabilities in this application itself. Like we were able to upload the malicious files, like to try to get the whether we can get the hold of the server, like the server where it is hosted. It was basically the file was getting stored in the temp directory. We cross verified that, and we tried with the gaining the shell, or gaining the access, reverse access from the server after a file upload. And there was a actually the vulnerabilities was present. We can bypass multiple controls and lot of many stuff. So this was basically, I would say, this vulnerabilities was undiscovered before the we contacted, we tried to contact vendor as well. So this, they have accepted these vulnerabilities because this is completely unknown and this was not discovered so far. And they, it's like kind of a 0 days, we call it as in the product, we found the 0 days with it, which is crucial, of course. Even though if it's not like this is a power system center, that means it is a publicly accessible, of course not, because that the power system grids for power grid stations are of course are the isolated zones, and you cannot directly intrude, or you cannot directly access that environments. But you can access with the different chain of attacks, different uh, kind of activities. If you perform properly well and you get the success, that's what we had. It was not a purely 1 day or 2 day of engagement. It was completely 2 to 3 weeks of engagement we had performed. And with that engagement, we were able to find out multiple vulnerabilities and intruded into the environment. So with this is basically, I just wanted to put highlight on this, like how we can. It's not like this is a limited. This is something which few of the test cases or few of the uh, goals which we had, and we have performed some of the activities in the real life scenario. This is also a real scenario which we have done. We can get a different hurdles as well. So we have to tweak the things, and we have to process, and we have to do the attacks, because this is something, of course, to check the what, how much is your environment secure. And your, of course, and the environment was quite secure, but the system center was not. That's the reason we were able to utilize that as our tool, or I would say the uh, of course the tool or the actual victim it was. And then we targeted all other things. So that's it about my entire offensive engagement, like how we did and how we have done, what we have found, how it can be done as well. So with that, I will move on to the defensive part, which is of course is always required. And what I always prefer is the proactiveness instead of the be becoming as a reactive. Of course, reactive is sometimes is okay, but most of the time you should be a proactive, and that's what is required always. And this is what we have jotted down. The first is the attack surface. So now our attack surface we have already provided. I have already presented that what was the attack surface. So we intruded into the environment, and then we do then the MITM and got the impersonation and lot many stuff. So attack pod surface for us was the user with the weak credentials, and we entered into the specific zone, and we had done lot many activities. So this is what is number of possible entries or access points where you can get the access or through which you can get the access. So it can be digital, it can be physical, like through right now we were utilizing the both attack surfaces, physical as well as the digital. Like we were actually using the physical entry and the digital access as well, because that is what is something through the network we have done mostly, most of the engagement. And of course we had access to the environment. And of course we haven't utilized much of the social engineering activity. Some of the utilize, of course, like we haven't utilized phishing, but yes, we have utilized kind of one of the social engineering activity, like we try to trick the user who can actually lead to use another share folder which is not the actual share folder name, and that what actually MITM has performed. And we got lot many stuff as well. You can see in the attack vectors that can be anything. So how to reduce this kind of attack surface is what is the question to all of the organization, all of the sectors, and that will be, of course, will be increasing, because that is how the the technology is growing. The attacks are, 0 days are new, 0 days are coming, attacks are, complexities are increasing, attackers are increasing. So how you can do this and how you can reduce this attack surface, that what is my stake is into in terms of the reducing attack surface, is what is first you have to analyze yourself. Analyze yourself as in, you have to identify and understand what are the existing gaps in your environment, in your process. So the we talk about people, we talk about process, we talk about technology. So you have to identify the gaps what you have in the existing process, in the existing technology, in the existing people. So that is the main analysis and study we have to do first. What can be done to be a better or a best? Of course, we cannot guarantee 100% of the security. That is, nobody can guarantee. You have to just shut down the laptop and you can don't do anything. So that's not going to happen, because everybody is digitalized. Every world is now, everything is digitalized. So you cannot uh, do that. So 100% security, no possibility, but still you can minimize the risk ratio. That's what is how you can do it. Understand the gaps. What are the gaps? What is there any gap in the process? We are following a process, we are following a lot of compliance standard, we do have regulatory compliance, we are compliant to this, or we are added to this specific compliance. Okay, that is a good thing, but in terms of the compliance you have a checklist. You do, okay, physical security, network security, application security, multiple stuff, identity and access management. But this is something is, it gives you the set of guidelines, but you have to also be prompt in the properly configuring that stuff and cross verifying and testing that stuff. When it comes to a testing, that is always also necessary, because if you don't test it, you will not come to know how it is, whether it is working properly or not, whether it is efficiently working or not. That's what is something is required. That is one of the area. Then definitely defense in depth. That's what I just now mentioned about the layered approach. We have multiple layers. I'm not talking about the OSI opens. This is 7 layers, or this is about defense in depth. Like, of course, it relates to that OSI, of course, but that is his multi-layered approach. You should be having the controls or proactive controls at the each and every layer. That's what is a defense in depth. So you should have physical security, network security, application security, perimeter, account or identity access management. You should have, or you should have the host protection. When it comes to host protection, we should, of course, not only rely on the antivirus solution which we have, or the, okay, whatever Windows different. I would not say, I'm not targeting any specific item, but we should have the next generation EDR or XDR solution. That's what is something which is, we have to be proactive on that. We have to be properly logging and monitoring. We should have, that is something which gives you the proper trail of the evidence if something happens. Of course, it is a kind of, in once incident, if incident happens, that is, then you actually dig into the stuff. But still, logging and monitoring is something is required as well for all of the things. So there are plenty of areas where you should be a proactive in the perimeter. When it comes to perimeter, of course, that is where your entry point is from the external attacker. So even though you should have a, when you don't, like, if you have a firewalls or intrusion detection or prevention systems, or maybe the DDoS protection, what about the next layer where the, your people gets fooled or tricked? Okay, you have the controls, everything in place, but if somebody is trying to trick the actual employee with the multiple scams or multiple, social engineering attempts, that is what is happening, and the people are getting tricked as well. So that is where we have to be proactive in that side as well. Employee key awareness is what is required. Best practices, of course, if I talk about this product, so of course, like, we have plenty of products, we have plenty of applications we are using. Although it is anything, it can be retail application, it can be any application like this is one of the crucial application or a product which I can tell. So in terms of the application security or the product side security, why not we have approach of the security in DevOps, that we call it as shifting left. Of course, that is DevSecOps. So when it comes to this DevSecOps, of course, we have a checklist. Like, we do a SAST, we do a DAST, we do a software composition analysis, we do a pen test, we do a IST sometimes. So that kind of, checks or that kind of a testing should happen before the product goes live. Because whatever we are right now saying is all our products, all are the applications, mobile, it can be mobile, web, or product itself. It can be thick client or like the desktop products as well. So we have to be proactive in that as well, to check the all the controls before deploying into production or before releasing for the public. That is what is the shifting left approach. And I would encourage to, have the integration with your pipeline. CI/CD, what we call it as, in the standard technical term, the CI/CD pipeline integration for these things, if we have. Because when we talk about SDLC process, we should talk about secure SDLC, and we should talk about the security should be a part of the any kind of SDLC process, no matter what, but that should be there. So that is what is always required: security in SDLC. That means secure SDLC. You can call it as secure SDLC. You can call it a DevSecOps approach, anything. And the last one is, which I always tell, is the PPT, which is not a presentation. It's all about people, process, and technology. What we actually discuss, of course, we have to assess the technology as well. What we are exactly using, whether we are, of course, a simple example, any organization, when we talk about the procurement of any product or procurement of any kind of, technology or anything, we always do evaluation, that we call it as a vendor evaluation or product evaluation, or it's kind of a evaluation. So that evaluation should be proper. Evaluation should be based on the good number of parameters with the good number of, actual test scenarios. That is the evaluation what we need should be done while procuring any kind of product or selecting any kind of product in the environment, that is always required. The process itself, the people define a process, we only define a process. We have the set of, maybe we talk about ISO 27001 and multiple stuff. So existing process what we have, that should be revisited within a span of time and check whether we are lacking somewhere or not. It should not be, we once we create a process, it should, okay, after 3 years or 4 years we will see that. So we have to revisit the processes and see whether there is any kind of areas of improvement. That's what is. And the people is always a targeted person or targeted vector. So awareness, I am, like I have seen, like our, we have also seen, even though you give awareness, sometimes attackers are more, smarter right now. So like we have also done it similarly, like in red team engagement, we were kind of enough, create a lot of templates which can actually fool the people or trick the people to fall into that social engineering attempt. That's what we have also done. So that is the actual learning part for both of us, like how we can tweak the specific attacks and trick the people, which is of course to test the people. And the people also will understand, okay, this is how we are getting tracked, or that's what we have, we don't need to click, or we should not fall under this kind of scam. That is how they should learn. So that's what is always required, sharing, learning, creating awareness. So the when it comes to organization and all the sector, we should have the awareness programs, awareness things, the cross trainings always with the security. Of course, most of the organizations are having, they are following good amount of practices, but still we see attacks, we see a breach there. This is not something it actually or suddenly happens. There is something which triggers that breach, or that triggers that specific attack as well. So we have to be proactive in all these scenarios, because although we have all this set of controls, all these things in place, but still there are breaches are happening. So that's what is something is needed. And with that, I would like to, you know close my presentation, and I would like to thank you once again to BSides Milano and the CyberArch Consulting for giving me the opportunity to perform this presentation and perform the rec team engagement. And I would leave it to you. Thank you for listening. This is a kind of, it was not a kind of a demo session, but still it, sometime this kind of sessions get bored. So but yeah, thank you all for listening this session, and I would leave it to you. Please ask if any questions.